On page 420, we see a different kind of problem. What is the molarity of an aqueous sulfuric acid solution if 12.88 milliliters is neutralized completely by 26.04 milliliters of 0.1024 molar sodium hydroxide? This is different than the others because now we're trying to calculate molarity, which is a two-part unit. So I want my answer in moles of H2SO4 per liter of H2SO4. And the first thing you do in any situation is go ahead and balance the equation. So we need 2 for sodium hydroxide, and that gives us 2 waters. Now, when you look at this, the question of where do I start comes up again. And on these, I think it's harder to have a clear path to starting unless you really have an idea where you're going. So those of you that like to start with what you're given, you might start with this 12.88 milliliters of sulfuric, but then you don't know where to go from there, and you could end up with that in the wrong place because this actually belongs on the bottom. So this is an example where I think starting with what you want really comes to your advantage. We want our answer in moles of sulfuric per liter of sulfuric. So as we look at this, we say, well, I have from my balanced equation 1 mole of H2SO4 per 2 moles of sodium hydroxide. And I know that it's 0.1024 moles of sodium hydroxide per 1,000 milliliters of sodium hydroxide. I know that I have 26.04 milliliters of sodium hydroxide, and I have 12.88 milliliters of sulfuric. So if you look at those two numbers and you're like, well, I don't know which one to start with. If you start with the 26 mils of sodium hydroxide, you'll come out okay. If you start with this one, you'll end up upside down and you'll have to take another path. Question? You can, yes. If you end up with your answer upside down, you can just take the reciprocal. But for whatever reason, my students often get very confused by that. So I like to start with what I'm given, or with what I want. So moles of H2SO4. So I'll just say, I'm going to start with that. I have 1 mole of H2SO4, sulfuric acid, per 2 moles of sodium hydroxide. Now I want to keep this unit, and somehow I want liters of sulfuric on the bottom. So I know from my balanced equation, okay, this is from my balanced equation, I know the molarity. I have 0.1024 moles of sodium hydroxide, so that'll cancel that, per 1,000 mils of sodium hydroxide. So now moles cancels. Now I want to cancel my milliliters of sodium hydroxide, 26.04 milliliters of sodium hydroxide. So now that cancels. Now at this point, the only thing I have left unit-wise is moles of sulfuric, which I want. But I need liters of sulfuric on the bottom, and I have not used this number yet. So I'll just stick it on the bottom. 12.88 milliliters of H2SO4, and now I can change that. 1,000 milliliters is 1 liter. So now I have the unit I want. Now sometimes students feel uncomfortable doing this. If you feel disturbed because nothing's written here, just put a 1 in there. But it didn't bother you that nothing was written here, right? So it is okay to leave something blank. And it's just the same as dividing by that. Now, you could have also started with this. You can start anywhere. But if you started with this, you would have ended up with an upside down answer. And that's why I like to start with what I want. So there are many ways to do it. And when you do the math, you get 0.1035 moles of H2SO4 per liter, or 0.1035 molar. Because molar is a two-part unit, moles per liter. Okay, go ahead and try this one. Go ahead and do that with your groups on your boards.